Have you ever wanted to tell somebody a secret, but didn't want anybody else to know that you even had a secret? That's where steganography comes from. Hello, my name is Ryan Brown. I'm a grad student at Virginia Tech, and I will be telling you about the history, methods, and implementation of steganography, specifically image steganography. At the end, I'll demo a short program I wrote that hides a secret message within an image file. What is steganography? Steganography is the practice of representing information within another message or physical object to avoid detection, hiding a secret message within something ordinary so that nobody knows it's even there. Specifically, image steganography is the practice of using digital images to conceal a hidden message. It comes from the Greek word steganographia, which combines the words steganos, meaning covered or concealed, and graphia, which means writing. A brief history: the first recorded use of steganography was in Greece in the year 440 BC. In the Histories written by Herodotus, he mentions two examples. The first example is when the Greek ruler Histiaeus sent a message to his son-in-law by shaving the head of his most trusted servant, marking the message onto his scalp, and then sending him to deliver the message again once his hair had grown back. Then he tells the servant to shave his head once again when he got to the recipient. The second example is Demaratus, who was once a king of Sparta, writing a warning of an attack directly on the wooden backing of a wax tablet before applying the wax surface. Since the wax tablets were pretty common back then to use as reusable writing surfaces, it wasn't likely that someone would expect it to contain a secret message. Another historical example is from World War II. The Germans developed a technique to reduce the size of information, mainly images, until it was the size of a typed period. They would then send documents that contained these shrunken texts or images to a recipient who would then need a microscope to read the tiny message. So wait, hiding a secret message within another medium, isn't that just cryptography? The answer is no, it's different from cryptography. So what's the difference if they're both methods of communicating private data to somebody else? Cryptography involves protecting the contents of a message using algorithms to scramble the data or alter it in another way in order to prevent unauthorized parties from knowing what is being sent. The sender and the receiver would use a common key to encrypt and decrypt the data, respectively. Steganography, on the other hand, is the practice of concealing the fact that there was ever a message being sent in the first place. The sender would embed the message within some medium, and the receiver would need to know how it was embedded in order to successfully extract the message. If successful, unsavvy people won't even realize that the communication is taking place at all. Today, steganography is mostly used with digital data being the medium and networks being the delivery channel. Both are ways to protect information, but neither are perfect and both can be compromised. Once the presence of a hidden message is detected or even suspected, the purpose of steganography is partly defeated. A very crude description of digital steganography is using digital files to hide other digital files. Nearly all file formats can be used, but the formats that are most suitable for steganography are the ones with a high degree of redundancy. Redundancy is important because the redundant portions of a file, or the redundant bits, are the ones that are replaced with the hidden message data without the alteration being easily detected. So what are the different kinds of steganography? There's text, image, audio, video, or protocol. Hiding information in text has historically been the most important method. An obvious method would be to hide a secret message in every nth letter of every word of a text message. Since the beginning of the digital age and the internet and the creation of all different kinds of digital files, text steganography has decreased in importance and use, especially since text files have only a very small amount of redundant data. Images are now by far the most popular cover objects for steganography. Given the large amount of data and redundant bits, it is easy to conceal hidden messages using this medium. In audio or video files, the technique used to hide information is similar to that of images. One technique is called masking, which creates a channel to hide information using a faint sound in the presence of a louder sound. Audio files are, however, less popular than images due to, in part, the larger size of any meaningful file. It would be easy to elicit suspicion using an audio file that doesn't really hold much value or importance. Protocol steganography is the technique of embedding information within messages in network control protocols. One example would be to use the header of a TCP/IP packet using fields that are either optional or never used to store actual data. So how does image steganography work? First, we need to know how computers see images. A computer sees a picture as a collection of numbers that represent different light intensities in different areas of the image. These numbers form a grid, and each individual point is called a pixel. The number of bits in the color scheme is called the bit depth. It refers to the number of bits in each pixel. Monochrome and grayscale images both use 8 bits for each pixel and are able to display 256 colors or shades of gray. Digital color images usually use 24-bit files and use the RGB color model known as true color. In this case, the 24 bits are split evenly between red, green, and blue, with each of these primary colors being represented by 8 bits. With this bit depth, an image can contain more than 16 million colors. This can cause the file size to become very big very quickly. These large file sizes can make it difficult to transmit over a standard internet connection. So how does my wife send all these super high-res pictures of my kids to me all day while I'm at work? Well, that's where compression comes in. There are two kinds of compression, lossy and lossless. Both methods save storage space, but the methods used to implement them are different. As you may have guessed, when you compress an image with a lossy method, you lose some of the data. And when you use a lossless method, no data is lost. With a lossy compression method, only excess or redundant data is lost, and the differences are negligible and usually too small to differentiate. The resulting image looks close enough to the original, but is not an exact duplicate. With a lossless compression method, no data is removed, but instead gets represented in mathematical formulas. The result is a bit-by-bit identical copy of the original. So why do we care? You have to consider all of these facts when choosing a method to use when compressing an image with a hidden message. With lossy, it's possible to lose some of the hidden message. With lossless, the resulting file size may not be small enough to be able to transmit where you want to. So you have to decide which option is best for your situation. Image steganography techniques can be split between two groups, image domain and transform domain. Image domain techniques embed the message in the intensity of the pixels directly. They incorporate bitwise methods like inserting data into the LSBs of each byte, or the least significant bit, and are sometimes considered simple systems. The techniques are usually dependent on the image format, and the ones most suitable to use with these techniques are lossless, such as BMP or GIFs. In the transform domain, images are first transformed and then the message is embedded in the image. It involves the manipulation of algorithms and hide the message in more significant areas of the cover image, which makes it more robust. These methods are usually independent of the image format, although JPEGs are common to use this technique on, and the embedded images may survive the conversion between lossy and lossless compression. LSB stands for the least significant bit. LSB insertion is a very simple approach to embedding information into a cover image, and it accomplishes that by using the LSB in each byte to store data. Let's look at an example. This color is FE5632 in hexadecimal. The FE represents the 8 bits of red, the 56 represents the 8 bits of green, and the 32 represents the 8 bits of blue. If we were to change the LSB in each byte of this color, we would end up with this color here. We now have a hex value of FF5733 because we have flipped the LSB of the 8 bits representing the red in the color, the LSB of the 8 bits representing the green, and the LSB of the 8 bits representing the blue. Going back to our historical example of Histiaeus writing the message on the head of his servant, these last bits of each byte, the LSBs, would be the hidden message written on the scalp, and the other 7 bits you can think of as the hair that he grows back. These colors are nearly identical and indistinguishable from each other to the human eye. making LSB insertion a very effective way of hiding data within a cover image. On average, only half of the bits in an image will need to be modified to hide a secret message. Though effective, using consecutive bytes of image data to store the message is easy to detect. A more secure way of using this method would be to share a secret key with the recipient of the message that specifies only certain pixels that are changed. Another thing to take into consideration is to make sure that the image is large enough with high enough resolution in order to store the size of the message that you want within the image. Palette-based images like GIFs are another popular image file format used on the internet. They have a bit depth of 8, so the maximum number of colors that can be stored in a GIF is 256. They use what is called a color lookup table. Each pixel is represented by a single byte, and the value of that byte is an index for the table. The colors are typically ordered by which ones are the most used, which decreases the lookup time. The issue with using this method is that depending on the colors in the table, changing the LSB of one pixel can result in a completely different color from the original, making the insertion of data much more obvious. One way to overcome this issue is to sort the table of colors so that the similar colors are next to each other. Another method to solve this problem is to use grayscale instead. Since you have 256 shades of gray, this makes it much more difficult to detect the insertion of data. Compression in the transform domain embeds hidden information into the frequency components of an image, as opposed to the light intensity components using image domain techniques. To compress a JPEG, for example, the RGB color representation is first converted to YUV. In the YUV color space, the Y represents the brightness of the image, the U represents the blue projection, and the V represents the red. The human eye is more sensitive to changes in brightness than it is to changes in color. So in JPEG compression, after it's converted from RGB to YUV, the Y component, which again is the brightness, is left alone, while the U and the V components are halved, decreasing the file size by a factor of 2. The next step is the actual transformation of the image. For JPEG images, either the discrete cosine transform, or DCT, or the discrete Fourier transform, DFT, are used. The discrete cosine transform is the most common one used. It transforms a signal from the image representation into a frequency representation by grouping the pixels into 8 by 8 blocks and transforming the pixel blocks into 64 DCT coefficients each. In this pixel group, the lower frequencies are contained in the upper left section up here, and the higher frequency components are in the lower right. Going back to the human eye, it is not so good at picking up differences in strengths in high frequency brightness. So one can easily make the change in the strength of the higher frequencies without having an obvious change in the result of the image transformation. So pretty much any data you want to embed in the image is done here within the higher frequencies using the same principles of LSB insertion. Going back to that image from slide 11, there are other algorithms in image steganography that can be categorized as being either in the transform domain or the image domain, depending on the implementation. They are patchwork and spread spectrum. Patchwork works by selecting two areas of an image at random. All the pixels in patch A, for instance, would be lightened, while all the pixels in patch B are darkened. They are both increased and decreased by the same constant value, respectively. The changes encode 1 bit, and the changes are generally small and imperceptible, while the average luminosity remains unchanged. One disadvantage is that only 1 bit is embedded. More bits can be embedded by dividing the image into sub-images and then applying the embedding into each of them using the same technique. However, the ability to do so is dependent on the image size. Spread spectrum is defined as the process of spreading the bandwidth of a narrowband signal across a wide band of frequencies. In image steganography, this technique spreads out hidden data across the entire cover image, making it more difficult to detect. It is embedded in the noise and then combined with the cover image to produce the stego image. Without access to the original image, it is near impossible to detect the hidden data. So each of these methods have strengths and weaknesses. Considering each of them is important when selecting which method to use for your scenario. and it must meet the following criteria: how well your secret message is hidden, how much data you can fit into a cover image or the payload capacity, how well it can defeat statistical attacks, how well it can withstand manipulation of the image, whether or not the file format used matters, and if the type of file selected will raise suspicion among people looking to discover your secrets. This chart highlights the strengths and weaknesses of each technique. Using LSB insertion with BMP images is high capacity for hidden messages, but more alterations are made, the easier it is for someone to detect that a hidden message is there. It's best suited for situations where payload capacity is prioritized over secrecy. Using LSB insertion in GIFs also allows for a reasonable amount of data in grayscale images, but has a lower capacity than BNP images and can be easily detected due to the color palette processing that takes place. Would be best suited for embedding messages into grayscale images. JPEG compression offers a high degree of invisibility, and JPEG is a widely used format, so it generally would not raise a lot of suspicion. It is, however, more complex to implement due to the mathematical transformations and is best suited for sharing images with secret data over the internet. The patchwork technique has a high level of robustness against image manipulations like cropping or rotation, but it has a low capacity for hidden information, so it would be most useful in situations where you have a small amount of highly sensitive data. Finally, the spread spectrum technique is highly resistant to statistical attacks, but it is very complex and computationally intensive. It would be best where you need a very secure, resilient way of sending hidden data. So which one is the best? Well, that depends. There's no one technique that is best for all situations. So as I said before, you would need to carefully consider what the most important features are for your specific situation. You need to ask yourself, how much data do you need to send? Who's going to be trying to discover your secrets? What method of transmission is available? All these things are important questions to answer before deciding which technique to use. Alright, so now I'm going to demonstrate a small program I wrote to hide a secret message within another image. Okay, so now I'm going to demonstrate hiding an image within another image file. The cover image I'm going to be using is a BMP. It's actually a picture of a Soviet BMP, an infantry fighting vehicle. The secret image that I'm going to be using to embed in that BMP file is a picture of Sean Connery. I'm a big James Bond fan, and I figured this was appropriate for the topic. Alright, so here's the program that I wrote to embed the image. Right here, I list the directory where the files are located. This is the name of the BMP file to use as the cover image. This is the name of the hidden image to embed within the cover image. And this is the name of the output file that I'm going to be writing to. So first, I read in the BMP file as an array of bytes. Then I'll read in the hidden image as well. Next, I grab the pixel array offset. So every BMP file has a header, and that header just lists specific information about the type of file and the size of the data. And so what I want to do is grab the byte index of where the actual pixel data starts. So it would be after that header. So I grab that here, and then I loop through each byte in the hidden data file. And for each bit within that byte, I want to embed into the LSB of a byte within the BMP file. And I do that basically until I run out of bits in the hidden image file, and all of them have been embedded into the LSBs of bytes in the BMP file. So once that's done, I write to the output file as defined above, and hopefully I should get an image that is identical or nearly identical to the original BMP file. So I'm going to run this program, get the expected output secret image file successfully embedded. So I'm going to open up that directory again, and here this image file has been created. So I'll open that up. and it is identical to the original BMP image. So I successfully embedded that secret image within the BMP file. Okay, so now I'm going to use this other script that I wrote to extract the embedded image from the BMP file. So here I just list that directory again. This is the file name of the file that was just written to, that has it's the cover image with the secret image file embedded within. And then here I just give a name of an output file to get the extracted secret image file from. Here's the image size. So I just got that to, that's the size of the secret image file. I need that to know when to stop reading bits from the uh, hidden BMP file. So what I do, I start by reading in that BMP file as a byte array, get that pixel array offset once again, and then I start looping through each byte within that BMP file, and I want to grab the LSB from each of those bytes and write it to another byte that I can use to write to the extracted file, which will hopefully create a representation of the original secret image file that I created, or sorry, that I used to hide in the BMP file. So I'm going to go ahead and run that once again. Okay, I got the expected output. Secret image file successfully extracted. So I'm gonna open up so I can see that it was extracted successfully, or I'm sorry, the new file was created successfully. So I'm gonna open that up and hope that it's identical to the original picture of Sean Connery. And it is. So there's the extracted file, and there's the original file. Extract it again. All right, so there was my demonstration of using LSB insertion to hide a picture of Sir Sean Connery in an image of a Soviet BMP. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you.